This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Forging Table. The mission of Undaunted.Life is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. At the Forging Table, you'll see a group of regular guys forging spiritual resilience by digging into God's Word, and we're welcoming all of you to come along on that journey with us. Now, that's Ryan. We got the OG here to the right side. The Horn is here. Horn, you've been here since the very, very beginning.
I've been here since the start, yes.
But you and I we're in a little bit of a predicament here.
Yeah.
Because there is a risk that, I mean, we're on the same side of the table, so obviously there could be some issues. You smell great. Which, by the way, what's the scent of the day?
Yves Saint Laurent.
One more time?
Yves Saint Laurent.
Okay, that is the fanciest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. So everything's good on this side of the table. The problem is on the other side of the table, we have two gigantic question marks. Yeah. Because this is the first time, maybe since the very beginning, that we've had not one, but two people doing their maiden voyages on the show at the same time.
I've just noticed this isn't the first time.
It's not the first time,
but it's the first time. But every time it happens, I get stuck with them.
Oh, that's true.
Every time there's new people, except for Russell Eustace.
And that's actually not, that's not on purpose, because I would definitely want to have someone else in here just in case things go poorly. No, because here's the deal. If things do go poorly, it's just me and you, man.
Oh,
it's just
I know.
me and
we
you.
could do it.
Okay?
We could do it.
But guys,
I got plenty of content.
For the very first time, two new guys. We have Howard Wickersham and Donnie Van Kuren. Guys, welcome to the Forging Table.
You.
We are so happy to have you.
Love
it. So just to kind of give a little bit of a heads up, this is like a Faith Bible Church. We don't call them ABFs here because they are Sunday schools. ABF is the dumbest name anyone's ever said ever. So, but we are all in the same Sunday school class. And here's the interesting thing about our Sunday school as well. So Donnie is one of the co-leaders of our Sunday school. But the cool thing is we have a rotation of teachers, and all four guys at this table have taught our Sunday school on multiple occasions. So we kind of have a little bit of an embarrassment of riches in our Sunday school, which I'm totally fine, like hiding and not allowing to go to any other classes. Like they can fend for themselves. But we do have maybe 7 or 8 different guys that are kind of rotating through, which is awesome. But guys, for your first thing, everybody's got to answer the same 3 questions if it's their first time on the Forging Table. So you're right across from me and you're taller than Donnie. So Howard, you are first. What?
We should have made rock, paper, scissors for it.
I mean, we could. Okay, wait. So how does everybody say it? Because like some people say paper, rock, scissors, which is how I grew up. How did you grow up? What was it called?
That was rock, paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors, Donnie?
Same.
Rock, paper, scissors?
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
What the heck's going down in Lawton?
Apparently nothing but...
It's paper, rock, scissors, bro.
This is what we call it. You said Rochambeau. Can you even spell it?
You know what Rochambeau is?
I don't.
Don't ever play Rochambeau. It's like rock, paper, scissors, but in the end, someone just kicks you in the nuts. Like literally, that's what happened to me.
Okay. I think we'll save that story for the last time. But I guess y'all can play. What'd you call it? Rock, paper, scissors.
Rock, paper,
freaking
scissors.
Neanderthals, all of you. Okay, so we got to establish the rules. So it's got to be 1, 2, 3, and then you throw down. Okay,
shoot.
So 1, 2, 3, then shoot. Best 2 out of 3. Here we go.
We just do 1. We don't have
I'm running the Forging Table here. Okay, all right. Best out of 3. We could do a whole World Series if you want.
Yeah,
best out of 3. Winner goes first. All right, here we go. Ready?
All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3, shoot. No, see.
Paper covers rock.
Okay, paper covers rock. All right. So a commanding lead of 1-0. Here we go. Donnie, you got to say.
Donnie, you got to try.
Remember, it's paper, rock, scissors, shoot. Yeah, you didn't even look like you were ready to sweat. Here we go. Ready to go. Ready, get. Okay, wait, Donnie. Okay, we're Donnie. It's 1, 2, 3, and then you throw it.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, everybody ready?
Right?
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Now, see, Donnie, it's
still big.
1, 2, 3, shoot. Then shoot.
There you go. See that?
Okay. All right. Is it still technically 1-0?
Yeah, it's 1-0.
People listening to this right now are like, "What is wrong with these idiots?" Here we go. Okay, 1-0. Okay, 1, 2, 3, shoot. Donnie, you got it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, shoot. Paper. 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Howard wins. He goes first.
Congratulations. Donnie
rocks.
banged a hole in the table, but that's okay. So here are the questions that you have to answer. You have 2 minutes total to answer to answer these 3 questions, right? So how'd you become a Christian? How do you like to study the Bible? And how does your mind work? Ready, go.
So I became a Christian when I was very young, at the age of 7. So I grew up in a Christian church. My dad was a pastor. Pastored in a lot of churches across the Midwest, so Indiana, Kentucky, some of those areas, and so always knew about faith and attended church. And so at the age of 7, I came to know the Lord. I remember the day specifically. It was after church on a Sunday. My dad and I were sitting at dinner or sitting at lunch, and he kind of explained it more at an in-depth, personal experience. And so I knew at that point, I was like, I want that. I want that cleansing power. I want to be washed white as snow. And so I remember that night I wrote a letter to our pastor. My dad wasn't the pastor at that time. And so I wrote a letter to our pastor and said, I want to be baptized. And so the next Sunday I was baptized. So, but then grew up in the church. So that's how I became a Christian. So second one.
How do you like to study the Bible?
I love to study the Bible, mostly in forums like this, right? I meet with a group of guys on a Friday. We just open the Word. We talk about it. Sometimes we'll study a book, and sometimes we'll take an author and take something he has. But just love to talk about it with guys. You grow so much in that way, rather than just by yourself. So,
all right. And then how does your mind work?
I'm a big picture person. I don't get into a lot of the details. So I like to take things and summarize, and that's kind of how I work. Like, I like to see the big picture, and I guess that's what I would say. I'm a big picture guy.
Okay, let me actually ask you a follow-up question on that. So as you're reading, so something like Acts, which is, this is not poetry, like this is not like allegory, like this is like straight historical record kind of a thing. How does your brain naturally try to like use that content or categorize it?
I just think, when you look at Paul, you think about the experiences he went through in this, and you can break those down to 2 or 3 different things in each of the chapters, but you just see what he went through, and you try to correlate that to your life, and see like, okay, what can I take from those principles and applications and apply it to my life? So I guess that's what I would say for me.
Okay, very, very good. Well, Howard, welcome. We are so excited to have you for this batch. Donnie Van Kuren. All right, you got 2 minutes to answer all 3 of them. How'd you become a Christian? How do you like to study the Bible? How's your mind work?
Yeah, I probably bought fire insurance is what I would call it when I was really young. Second grade, living in California. They said, come up, you're going to hell. I said, I probably ought to go up.
They even said that in California?
Oh, pretty much.
Okay.
And now, of course, that was in the 70s.
Yeah, back in the day when Jesus was still there.
You got it. And then as I grew up, I just followed a sinful life and a fleshly life. And when I got married, I felt that I was in Tampa, Florida, and felt that just urge to, I actually convicted. Hey, were you really a Christian when you did this? Look at the fruit. Look at the lack of fruit. Look at your life. And one day I was studying EE Evangelistic Explosion back that time in Tampa, and they asked someone to come down, and I didn't know if there was a time and a place that I could say that I'd accepted Christ. And so I didn't know if I was a Christian and just feeling guilty, the Satan was coming and using me, or I needed Christ. So I just walked down. The pastor, I knew him very well, was teaching Sunday school, was real involved. And the pastor said, what are you doing down here? I said, we're going to take care of this. I'm either Satan's on my back and I'm getting him off there, or Christ is pushing me to get it done. And so from that point on, never doubted it. And that's where it really started.
Okay. How do you like to study the Bible?
I like commentaries. I like to really read. Sometimes I'll read books, but I also like to get into subject matter. So if I'm getting into faith and just studying faith, or studying love, or studying, just whatever, I like to get into word studies that'll take me through different scriptures. But I also like to hear commentaries and hear other people's versions of how they're looking at the scripture.
And how's your mind work?
I'm a big picture thinker as well. I see visions, I see pictures when I'm reading stuff, but I'm a real big application. I want to read something and go, how do I walk out the door and use it? How do I apply this to, the year we're in, the dates we're in? How do I apply it so when I walk out of here, I'm someone different in the way I do my job, the way I'm in my relation with my wife, the way I'm with my kids. I want application. So that's really what I'm centering on.
Okay, very good. Howard and Donnie, you are here. But Ryan, it's been a very long time since you've answered those questions. Well, because I was sitting here thinking, like, how would I answer those questions? So let's just do like a quickie. So, like, how'd you become a Christian? How do you like to study the Bible? How did your mind work?
Man, my journey as a Christian started young and didn't really end until I was 33. Grew up in the church. My dad worked for the church. All I could remember is going to church and doing church things, but I never really understood the gospel. Got older, went in and out of church. As I moved out of my house, I actually just found the church closest to my house and just went there. So I was kind of like what you would call a cultural Christian. Is that what Dawkins calls himself now? Richard Dawkins?
Yeah.
So I would be like a Dawkins-esque Christian, cultural Christian. Didn't really understand anything. And then when I was 33 years old, I just got hit with the gospel. Just was in a bad church that wasn't good. Kind of gave you a wrong theology in life. And I went and studied, kind of looked at different theologies, and then somebody just poured in my life actually asked me, what is the gospel? And I couldn't tell them. And finally, started digging into the Bible, actually reading the Bible for myself rather than listening to somebody else. And basically, I would say, what do they call it? The Baptist term, rededicated your life. So,
Yeah, there are two lines at every church camp. There's I want to get saved, and there's I want to rededicate.
Rededicate.
Right?
I would say that's when I feel like I became a Christian at like 33, 34 years old. Totally blew my mind on what Christ did for us on the cross. And then from there, how I like to think, I don't know, like sometimes I'm really quick on my feet. I'll say what's exactly on my mind. I kind of have a hard time listening. So, I got to listen a little bit more, but I'll just say whatever's on my mind.
No one's ever thought that about you, so this is all surprising information.
That's my wife, yeah. So, but sometimes I like to sit and stew. Like if I'm around a new environment with new people, like I know all you guys, I'll just shoot at the hip. But if I'm in a new environment, it's kind of funny. I'll sit back and I'll just watch and listen because I kind of want to know who I'm working with. So that's kind of how I think. And how I study the Bible, I just read it. I like commentaries like Donnie too. I like commentaries by Sproul. Been really into R.C. Sproul lately. Yeah, we're gonna butt heads on, or we won't butt heads. We're probably
Howard busted out the Sproul commentary a second ago.
Well, I'm sure his wife filled it out for him.
Don't worry,
she's a good one.
Lady
we'll get there.
No, but like I like commentaries, but actually I just like to get into the Word. I like to the way that I do this is I'll read it, then I'll highlight it, then I'll put down what I think it's saying, and then I'll pray about it, and then I'll go back, read it again, and then go through commentaries.
You do actually bring up a very important point about Lady Wickersham, because of all the women that I know, she probably does more for her husband than anybody else. Like you, the last time I was at your house for dinner, you literally made this comment. I thought you were kidding. You definitely were not, because you have the disposition of a golden retriever. You're always happy. So I don't know if you're kidding. I don't know if you're being sarcastic or any of those things. You said, I've never been to a grocery store. Like I've never gone to the grocery store to like get groceries. I was like, haha. And you're like, no. And so like, did Lady Wickersham like prepare your notes for you or anything like coming in here, or was this all on you today?
This was all on me today.
I
read it
It's on computer right now
this
because
is risk.
I honestly
Walking
wonder,
without a
like
net.
you look over at his notes and they're written, but you'll see like little hearts above the eyes. So I'm like, I know this was Lady Wickersham.
She's got to have great handwriting.
I did grocery shop once though. When she was pregnant, I did the grocery shop.
Oh, you didn't make her go?
I didn't make her go.
Do you keep bringing that up to her? Be like, do you remember that time when you really like sold me out? You don't ever bring that up? No, she's fantastic. We got a bunch of fantastic wives here at the Fortune Table right now. So it's funny because Donnie and I, me and your wife, we have a really funny relationship because she's so sweet that in her presence, I will try to say some of the darkest, most heinous things I can think of. And it never lands negatively. She just looks at me and smiles and goes, Kyle. And just
exactly
smiles.
right.
And I'm like, come on.
I think the word's precious.
Yeah. She, how did she, was that the,
She called you precious.
She calls you precious.
What was the context? I forget because I
don't
remember
know.
she called me that.
I was like,
just so
man,
precious.
Kyle, and she's like, he's so precious. And I went, are we talking about the same guy? Oh, come on.
Of all the things that I've been called, like that is not.
My favorite Lady Van Kuren story.
Oh,
I started going to the ABF. This was 4 years
great.
ago.
This is great.
Am I okay
This
to
is
tell
your
this
first
story?
class.
Yes.
This is your
Okay,
first
okay,
class,
good.
right?
This is my second class.
Okay, second class.
So
I
the first
forgot
class
about
we
this.
come in, this guy comes and talks to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm Kyle." And when you meet Kyle,
Sound like that? You sound like
he's like, "Hey,
do push-ups.
do you do jujitsu?"
No. Why are you being so breathy with it? Like
That's what I was wondering. I was like, man, no. But Kyle comes and talks to me. Kyle's really great, actually. He actually asked me a lot of questions about myself rather than just like sit there and talk about himself. And then he points me off to Adam Smith because I think Adam Smith just had surgery on his arm.
Yeah, bicep torque.
Yeah, and so, but we're in the class, and I can't remember who was teaching that day. Maybe it was Donnie. But the next class we come back, and Donnie and Heather sit next to us, and you're up there giving your testimony, and like I am not a touchy-feely. I am now, but 4 years ago I was not a touchy-feely person. Like the only person I probably ever hugged was my mom, and my wife. Like I don't really hug, and so all of a sudden I'm just sitting there and I'm listening, and I feel this just rubbing my back, just like this. And I look over right here. I'm like, wait, that's my wife right there. That's my wife right there. And then I look over here and I was like, this lady is rubbing my back.
Lady Van Kuren.
Lady Van Kuren. I was like, and it was just like, I don't know. Lady Van Kuren is so how do you want to say, nurturing and maternal. Like she's like a mom, like a really young mom. So,
but she needs to see
She's
the
gonna
worst.
love that you said young mom.
yeah, she's a really young mom.
She just needs to see the worst in people because,
That's right.
I try to say the worst, and it just never lands.
Well, and she baked you a cake.
Yeah, she did.
There's no one in the class that has a cake that's been baked for
my
her.
Baked
birthday.
me a cake, and I got her first shot of Patron.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
That's a story for another day. But I will say it is kind of funny too, because whenever I teach Sunday school, because I teach maybe 3 or 4 times a year or something like that, she gets like giddy beforehand because she just, the thing is, I don't understand why, because when I do teach Sunday school, I don't just fall in line with whatever with the thing we're talking about, or like, I've talked about abortion in there. I've talked about Pride Month and kind of the history and all the things that go into that. I talked like the weekend after the Hamas attacks on October the 7th, I came in and talked about all the atrocities and all that. It's like, it's all rough stuff.
So when we travel, we'll drive to Colorado, we'll drive places, and we'll listen to your podcast. And one of the things Heather said after your last lesson, I don't remember what you were teaching offhand, Kyle, your last thing, she goes, Kyle does his research. She goes, and she's heard you since Barzell. I mean, Kyle, she's heard you
That
teach.
was the last Sunday school
Even the
class.
last Sunday school class. And what she loves, and she, the topics are, but she's like, he does his research. He has good information. I always walk away feeling like I learned something. And that's what Heather loves about it.
Well, and here's the cool thing about going into Sunday school, because sometimes I never want to mail it in on anything that I do. So whether it's preparing for a podcast or a speech or Sunday school or something like that, the cool thing about our Sunday school class is it's one of the few times that I talk to mixed audiences. I do present to mixed audiences, but it's one of the few times where I'm talking to a mixed audience where everyone kind of knows what I'm about. Like that they know who I am. They kind of am aware of like the level of crazy and intensity and all that. And so if I'm trying to work through a subject matter or a thought, I kind of use our class as a bit of a sounding board. So I think the last one I did was on godly companionship. And and it was just kind of like, what does that look like? How does that kind of work itself out in a normal
you talked about
setup?
your dog.
That was right after I lost Roman. And so it's like, okay, because Ryan showed up to help me bury my dog. Russ, the other leader, Russ the ringleader from my foxhole showed up, and neither one of them were told to, right? They just did. Yeah. And there were a bunch of other guys that found out what happened. They're like, crap, if I had known, I would have come. And I know that they mean it. And so I was like, okay, what is that? Like, what is this? How do you get to Mark 2 where you have guys that are willing to destroy someone's personal property to get someone to the feet of Jesus? Like, and it's just like, do you have, 4 Matt Toters, as Joby Martin calls them, or something like that? One thing I want to kind of put a pin in this because we do need to dig into Acts 25, but maybe next week, Ryan, one thing that you talked about when you were sharing was you couldn't answer the question, what is the gospel? Yeah. So I put that on you to remember that for discussion for next week. So maybe we can start there. Yeah. But let's go ahead and dig into Acts 25, guys. We're working towards the end of the book of Acts. We have Paul that's, he's about to appeal to Caesar in this moment. And so, Howard, let's go ahead and rip off the Band-Aid. You are going to read out loud in front of all the people in the audience. Again, just talk directly into the mic. You only have to read 5 verses, though. Verses 1 through 5. Let's go.
Okay. 3 days after arriving in the Providence, Festus went up to Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders appeared before him and presented the charges against Paul. They requested Festus, as a favor to them, to have Paul transferred to Jerusalem, for they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. Festus answered, Paul is being held at Caesarea, and I myself am going there soon. Let some of your leaders come with me, and if the man has done anything wrong, they can press charges against him there.
So, Howard, which version of the Bible are you reading?
NIV, sorry.
NIV. Donnie, what do you read from?
I got New American Standard.
Okay, so we got NASB, ESV, and NIV here at the table, guys. So no matter what, some of y'all are happy and satisfied. Can you read it in Yiddish?
I actually can read it in, is it Pidgin?
Oh, no. Okay, we should do one. Can you get it up in Pidgin real quick?
Now, Ryan, you have the message on there, don't you?
Yeah, Ryan is a big message guy.
Yeah.
He's big on things that aren't actually scripture.
Yeah.
You look it up. We'll have you read here. So just to back up a little bit. So we saw back in Acts 24. So Felix was part of this entire process. And so according to Josephus, who was the Jewish historian at this time, he was recalled to Rome. Felix was recalled to Rome because he really savagely put down this dispute that was going on between the Jews and the Syrians. You know, the Romans were known as heavy-handed, but even by Roman standards, he acted in a heavy-handed manner, and so this did not really bode well. But we see here, even in the beginning part of Acts 25, the Romans had basically 3 stages of law and justice. And so the first stage is that charges were formed and sustained by a prosecutor. So that's stage 1. Stage 2, and this is coming from the stock commentary, by the way. I love the stock commentary for Acts. The second stage was proper formal accusation by the interested party. So you can't just be accused by some rando. You have to be accused by the interested party. And then the third was the case would be heard by the holder of the imperium in person. So essentially the accused would be able to see their accuser face to face. They'd be able to face their accuser. And so if we look forward to, 2,000 years later where we are now, we see some similar things. There are some issues in the justice system for sure, but we see that even here in this first part. So anything on the first 5 verses, let's go ahead and jump in.
I think what's really cool is Festus is like it's totally different than Felix. And that Felix was kind of
had a different reputation for sure.
Yeah, he was like, Felix was a procrastinator. Didn't he like leave Paul in jail? So like,
he was waiting for him to like, and
2 years.
Maybe he'll give me money and
Chiefs,
he can get out of here.
Yeah, so like he like kind of procrastinated, and then here comes Festus. Festus is like, yo, I'm going down. I need to see what's going down over here. And I just think it's crazy. Like Festus comes down there, and that all of a sudden they're like, the Jewish chief leaders are all already ready. Like, hey, let's try to get him. Let's try to get him to move him to Jerusalem so we can kill him. Like they already have it like planned out with this new guy. And this new guy is like, hey, like, sorry, it doesn't work that way. Like then he needs to face his accuser. So you guys can bring some people up there or down there with me. So I thought it was pretty cool to look at the difference between Festus and Felix.
That's the thing that jumped out at me is that sin, the more we feed it, the more it just sticks around. And for 2 years, he's in prison. They're just waiting for him to come back so they can continue to exert that hatred that we have. And we see that so much in our society. It doesn't go away because it gets docile, because it's dormant. It comes back.
Yeah.
And sin just continues to stay in our lives. We feed it. It gets worse. And they're just waiting to pounce. You'd think after 2 years, like, okay, let's get on with life. This didn't happen.
I thought time heals all wounds, right, man?
It's a great bumper sticker. It really, really is. Well, okay. So I actually want to maybe park there for a little bit. So this time heals all wounds thing, because, Donnie, you're a licensed family therapist and different things like that. And so you've literally dealt, like you've jumped neck deep in the muck with people who have like legitimate wounds, not somebody asked me where I was from and that's a microaggression, but like real issues. For some people, time is actually the worst thing, because the further away they get from whenever the atomic bomb went boom, the worse it actually gets in their brain. Because I don't think it was you that said this; it was someone else that was kind of in our world, like, because someone was trying to describe what post-traumatic stress is or what that seems like. It's like, okay, you have a record playing only negative things, and it's on skip. So what you want to get to is where you have the thought or the memory or the whatever, and you can let the song play. Even if the song's terrible and it sucks, so anything by the Beatles or anything like that, so even if it's terrible, you wait until it's over and then it's over, right? The problem with something like that is it just spins and spins and spins, so you could get away from the issue, but it still sucks, maybe worse.
When you see this a lot in politics, where we continue to feed that hatred, we see it on social media, we read about it, we talk about it, and that's just a feeding. I've read a lot of commentary where we talk about, how do we kill that plant when we stop feeding it? You stop watering a plant, it dies. But when you keep watering, it grows. And that's how I've seen hatred and anger, especially from man to man or man to woman, et cetera. You just continue to feed it and it grows and it doesn't go away. We just keep feeding it. And just like you said, it goes round and round.
I had an employee, here in the last 6 months that came to me and was expressing some frustration about some things that he had harboring for years. Like, had no idea. And he comes to me frustrated about that. I'm like, heck, if you would have just came up and had a conversation with me, we would address that and squashed it. But for 2 years, he harbored it and never told me about it. And I'm like,
did he give you any like reason as to maybe why? Would he just conflict avoidant
again,
or
like
something?
Like you said, it's just one of those things. A lot of these guys they harbor things inside and they think, well, I just internalize it and it'll eventually go away, try to suppress it down deep. And then 2 or 3 more situations happen, and then they finally explode. And when he came in and talked to me, it was almost an explosive, and after we talked about it, he was like, okay, I feel better about that now.
Well, Ryan, this actually came up this week in a conversation that we were having. There seems to be a very fine line for guys So think of your group text with like your best guys, right? So not just your golfing buddies or your drinking buddies or your, let's go watch the fights buddies, but like, your dudes, right? So your 3 a.m. friends, your foxhole guys or something like that. There seems to be a fine line between, if I send this to them, I'm just complaining and I'm just like whining, whatever. Or, over to this other side is like, no, this is appropriate. I'm modeling what humility is and that I need help and things like that. And I'll just kind of give the scenario. So I was having, if you looked on paper, I was having a bunch of really good things happening all at once, right? So like, gosh, what a cool thing, what a cool thing, what a cool thing, what an interesting thing, what a blessing. But my thoughts and my mindset was not matching the resume, right? Or the back of the baseball card. And so obviously there's a spiritual component to this, a spiritual warfare component to this. So what I did was I sent a text out to, the core forging table guys. And I was just like, I'm not fishing for compliments. Like, I don't need anything, but I'm struggling right now. I'm in a bit of a rut. Like, I can't seem to break free and get out of it. And that was it. But even sending the text, I was like, ugh. Like, am I just being like a whiny dude? Like, kind of whining and crying to my friends. And obviously, if I did that every day, it's like, okay, dude, shut up. Like, just, figure it out. Like, go away. But I feel like men, especially, and we have, 95% men in our audience right now, we kind of struggle with kind of where that line is. Yeah.
I mean, I think your text resonated with me. And the fact that I was kind of dealing with some stuff too, some spiritual warfare, and I was like, hey man, I wish I had the cojones to actually send out a text. But the other thing that I look at too is like, I don't want to burden you guys with that. Even as much as you guys are like, hey, we need to burden each other with our burdens, and it's just like, you know what, this is something I can deal with. I need to put my trust in God and just, try to stay on top of it. But no, it just kind of resonated that I'm like, hey man, there's nothing wrong with doing that. It actually opened me up.
Yeah. And what we lose is intimacy. When we're not transparent, we lose intimacy, whether that's with your friends, whether that's with your wife, your husband, whatever the case is, you lose intimacy because you don't have transparency. And we convince ourselves that that's the right place to be. But man, once we cross that line, I mean, me and you have dealt with that before. Yeah. Once we cross that line, it's a different relationship.
Yep. Well, Donnie and I have been very intimate, so.
You just had to. I was like, we're all going to be adults here, and we're just going to be able to move past it. And you just couldn't move past it.
No, because you were gonna
no,
at least use it against me at some point today.
No, actually, I am going to use something against you because you said that today in Sunday school. Yes, I'm going there. So I just got a brand new pair of Western boots. It's going to get bad, right? It's going to get bad. I got a brand new pair of Western boots. Like, they're great. There's the Ariat boots, they're ostrich boots and things like that. Yeah, Ryan is losing it right now if you're watching. And so for whatever reason, Ariat put this like tag on the inside of the like pulls on the boots, and it was basically made out of sandpaper. And so I was just telling Ryan like, yeah, I'm just gonna get this cut off and all that, so it'll just be ostrich on the inside. And he's just like, oh, well, I just wear taller socks. I was like, yeah, all my socks are roughly this size. And that's where the conversation could have stopped. But for whatever reason, Ryan decided to offer up one of the more hilarious things that I've ever heard or seen before. This dude proceeds to take off his boot, and he's got normal socks on, and then he's got other socks from the ankle up on. So not two pairs of socks, not tall socks. He's got normal socks on, and then just the chute or the flute or just the top part, the tube of the tube sock.
You can't buy that.
Yes, he cut him. He cut him like an animal.
Wow.
And he's just like, well, and I was like, Ryan, they sell tall socks. He's like, yeah, but they're too thick. What if I wear them in the summer? I'm like, they sell tall socks for the summer too. Ryan,
our conversation was just so intimate. I thought I could open up to you.
No, that was not it. We had just started talking in Sunday school. So what is up with that?
I thought we hit another level when we had cigars.
Well, I mean, we did. We shared some things. We had some memories. Where'd you get this idea?
Dude, it just came to me.
You like Pinteresting, like where to get socks for your boots?
I got those boots, and they're naturally taller than all the other boots I have. And so I was like, I went and I bought these Wrangler socks that go up to like your knees basically. but they were like really thick, and I hate wearing them in the summer or when it's hot outside. And so I was too cheap to look on Amazon and send some. And so I just cut some old socks I can wear anymore.
So guys, we have a GoFundMe in the show notes. We are raising money. Ryan makes a good living, but apparently he can't afford $20 for some socks or something like that.
We know what Christmas looks like.
Hey man, I'm just trying to recycle, man.
No,
I'm just trying to recycle. Do my part.
No, this is bad. I swore I wasn't going to.
Showed you.
I swore I wasn't going to bring it up.
Show you today too.
Of all
days,
right? You could have. We could have just skated right past this.
How did you not figure that one out, right?
Because I'm an idiot.
No, you're not an idiot. But that is one of the dumber things that I've ever seen. But no, that's I didn't plan to bring that up, but it just you couldn't leave that comment alone.
I'm sorry, the way
I couldn't leave.
Donnie and I were making eye contact when he said intimacy. So
are we gonna have to split y'all up? We can split y'all up. This doesn't have to get awkward. It's even getting awkward for the people watching on YouTube and Rumble Land. So
Donnie's like one of my best bros.
So. That's right, man.
Yeah,
he's my mentor, my spiritual mentor.
We're all bros here. This is good stuff. So Donnie, actually, let's keep this going. Let's read Acts 25. We're going to do 6 through 12, please.
All right, I find it here. So after they had spent not more than 8 or 10 days among them, he went down to Caesarea, and on the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. After Paul arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him, which they could not prove. While Paul said in his own defense, I have committed no offense either against the law of the Jews or against the temple or against Caesar. But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, answered Paul and said, are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial before me on these charges? But Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. I have done no wrong to the Jews, as you also very well know. If then I am a wrongdoer, I have committed anything worthy of death, I do not refuse to die. But if none of these is true of these things the men accuse me, no one can hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar. Then when Festus had conferred with his council, he answered, you have appealed to Caesar you shall go.
So here we go. The road to Rome is heating up right now, but this really does put Festus in kind of a predicament here. And so, one thing that, as y'all were talking about the difference between Felix and Festus, it seems like Felix was like operating as kind of an insecure leader, and then Festus was operating as a secure leader. Because I think we've all been under the leadership of an insecure leader. They're typically fairly brash and very forward and mean and striking, and someone that's more secure in their countenance is not going to do that. But the predicament is if he executes Paul without, any grounds to, because even Paul says up in verse 7, they had serious charges against him that they could not prove. If he executes him, that's going to piss off Rome because it's a direct injustice. But if he releases him, he's going to piss off the Jews. And so what a lot of these Roman leaders and governors and things like that, they were just trying to keep the peace as Rome was spreading war, which I know sounds ridiculous, but they were conquering. But then once conquered, they wanted everything to kind of chill and be relaxed. And so this really is quite the predicament. And we see Paul here. He's not just like, you can see he's not really afraid to die. In verse 11, I do not seek to escape death. But he's just basically saying there's no there. So can we just like get through this so that I can get back to doing my ministry, please?
I think one thing to look at is, I think if he ended up going down to Jerusalem and judged by Festus, I think he would have been found not guilty as we read on. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is we have to go back earlier in which the Jews were plotting to kill him. And so he got to be aware of some sort of plot to kill him on the way to Jerusalem. So the only way to stay alive is to appeal to Caesar.
Well, I think what's interesting, if you look at both Festus and Felix, like the Jewish leaders were trying to get them under their thumb, right? Yeah. Like they knew and they wanted to get Festus there just as quick as they could, like they had Felix. Mm-hmm. And so, you look at that, he's like, I know I've got to do something. That's why he's trying to show him favor by doing something, but he can't go against his Roman, rights.
And that's true. You wanted to say something.
Wasn't this pretty much Paul's 4th defense? And he'd been in prison 2 years. So this is, I think all the parties knew where we were going and where we've been. Yeah. And it just shows that we just kept going round and round with the same thing. Paul's, going to defend himself and basically put himself in this position. Jews are going to continue to say, hey, we're going to try to get you. And then, Festus or whoever was, running the show right there was trying to get out of it and make everybody happy.
And that's true. But I think Festus had a little bit more, what do you want to call it, character?
Nobility, a little bit.
Yeah, than Felix, and the fact that he wanted to govern in the right way. He was very proactive in how he dealt with things. But he also didn't really give in to the Jews either. They're like, hey, bring him down to Jerusalem. And he's like, no. Like, he needs to face his accusers before I ever do anything like that. And so you guys are welcome to come with me. And so I think, Festus, I think of Festus as like Pontius Pilate, in the fact that he's like, hey, I want to appeal to the Jews, but I wash my hands of this rather than actually doing the right thing.
What we see from most of these people is the Romans. Remember, we have to go back to why was Felix recalled to Rome? Because he was too heavy-handed. It wasn't that he was violent in putting down a rebellion or this issue. It was that it was way too much. And so the Roman, philosophy did, have an ideology of fairness and appropriate amounts of pressure. And here's the thing with Rome is Rome did not buy into this whole, I forget what it's called, but like, you hit me this hard, I'll hit you just as hard. It's like, if you hit me at all, I'm going to crush you into powder. Like, that's basically how Rome responded. But once everything's settled, it's like, we need to keep things in this kind of settled down manner. And so it seems like Festus was certainly one of the more effective guys that we see, even though he's kind of like a minor character here in this whole ideology. Anything else on these first 12 verses before we move on? All right. Now, Paul is going to be going for Agrippa and Bernice. So, Ryan, if you will hit 13 through 22. Are you going to read it in Pygmalion or whatever it was?
It's called Pygmy.
All right. Give us a couple of verses. And what is it? Pygmy?
It's a Hawaiian pigeon.
Pigeon. Sorry. All right. Here we go. Acts 25. And
it's actually called Jesus Guys 25. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see how far this goes.
Governor Festus come to Caesarea's side to take charge, and 3 days later, he go. Oh wait, that's the wrong one.
I don't think anyone noticed.
Is that an accent?
All right, start in verse 13.
Yeah. But by King Agrippa and Queen Bernice come Caesarea for give a deal aloha to Festus, because they going to stay over there a long time. Festus tell King Agrippa, both Paul. He tell, get one guy over here. That Felix leave inside the prison. I can't even read it. When I win, go Jerusalem, the main priests.
Right. How did you find this? Like, why is this up on your personal laptop?
On TikTok or what?
No, iPad? Man. I actually was looking at different. You know how I told you guys I collect different Bible translations.
Yeah.
Like, I was just looking at unique Bible translations, and I found this one, and I'm just like, it's amazing. Because this is an actual dialect in Hawaiian Pidgin, and we laugh about that Gen X Bible. Was it the Gen Z Bible?
Gen Z Bible,
Gen Z Bible. But like this is actually a Bible made so that people could actually understand it. And I just love how it just gives off a Jamaican, hey man, feel when I read it.
Well, that's going to make all the people in Hawaii listening to this very mad because they're not Jamaicans. How dare you?
Well, I know. It's
but
very
it's got an island flair.
It's got an island flair.
Tropical flair to it.
Well, dude, it's amazing how they came up with these words.
Can you play some background music?
I don't think we can.
Marley.
Yeah, this is going to be violative of all of the.
No, I actually really do enjoy it. I'll sometimes read translations, and it just makes reading the Bible.
Well, guys, shout out to all the random versions out there that make people feel happy on the inside. But let's go back to the normal people Bible, if you don't mind. So maybe the ESV.
Yeah.
Let's do Acts 25, 13 through 22.
13 through 22?
Yep.
Now, when some days have passed, Agrippa the king and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. And they stayed there many days. Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there's a man left in prison by Felix. And when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews laid out their case against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation. Against him. I answered them, and it was not the custom of the Romans to give up anyone before the accused met the accusers face to face and had the opportunity to make his defense concerning the charge laid against him. So when they came together here, I made no delay, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accusers stood up, they brought no charge in his case of such evils as I supposed. Rather, they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus, who was dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Being at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding them. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of the emperor, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow, said he, you will hear him.
So in this section, there's kind of some bookends from the stock commentary that I found to be helpful, but also interesting. So we see Agrippa. So this is Herod Agrippa II. That is the son of Herod Agrippa I. That's, we see in Acts 12. And he is the great-grandson of Herod the Great. Okay, so that's who we're talking about. But then you get all the way to the end. Excuse me, Paul. This is straight from the stock commentary. I thought this was great. Paul had created curiosity with Agrippa here, because we can see there, I would like to hear from him myself, much like Jesus did with Herod Antipas. So there was a curiosity here to be like, hey, bring this Nazarene before me. I want to talk to this guy. But kind of the same thing here, that in this moment, Agrippa doesn't have to talk to Paul to take care of this. He can just kind of, wave his hand over the situation and kind of deal with it. But there was a curiosity that was created here. So you can kind of see how all these historical characters are connecting to put us right on top of the narrative that we're in right now.
I think it's crazy that you look at Bernice and it calls her the queen. It was his sister.
Yeah.
So she was also ends up being like queen consort to Titus Caesar from Vespasian's line. And so it's just kind of strange to see, like, I think we're going to see the juxtaposition of
Nailed it.
Yeah. Of Agrippa and like Herod the Great and the ones before him who were really evil, but Agrippa II wasn't. But he wasn't without virtue in the fact that he was having an incestuous relationship with his sister.
Yeah.
And so I think like they put this here in the Bible for us to realize that Agrippa II was not a virtuous man, but we're going to see later on in the next chapter when Paul basically gives his testimony again, the things that Agrippa misses out on.
Paul being in prison 2 years and takes every opportunity to take the gospel to whoever's in front of him with the right attitude, with the right heart, with the right just focus. And so here he is at every opportunity. He says, this is what I'm here for. I'm not here for, comfort. I'm here for notoriety. I'm here to meet up with people and tell them about the gospel. And this is playing out to be such an interesting, here Paul is unassuming, been in jail for a bunch of his life, unassuming, persona, short, stocky, bald guy. I think that's what they say. I'm looking at you, realizing I'm saying this.
Yeah.
And he's getting ready to stand in front of this entourage of people that are so different than him, that have so much history, but that's where he wants to be.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny, like looking at just this setup in this scripture, like Paul before Agrippa and Bernice, or before that, like showing themselves on the way there, giving us the history behind everything. Because like, hey, we know Bernice, and we know of her because of Titus, and then we also know of Agrippa. But then it made me think back when he appeals to Caesar. At the time, Nero is Caesar. At this time. And at this time, Nero's under the tutelage of Seneca, I believe. And so he's actually a just ruler. So at this time, when Paul appeals, Nero's still a just ruler. And he hasn't gone off the deep end just yet. And so, at this point, you would see it as the safest play.
Well, and also Seneca, Stoic philosopher, within Stoicism, there was a strong conscientiousness bend towards justice and things that were right. And I don't mean that like right, wrong in a biblically moral sense, but just kind of doing the thing that was more altruistic. This might be like a hard left turn, but the thing that's interesting about when books like the Book of Acts elucidates specific people from history who have history written about them in secular sources, whether those be Jewish historians, Roman historians, secular historians, Stoic philosophers, whatever, those types of things, is where you see people that clearly have, sociopathic or psychopathic tendencies being used in still in the narrative of Scripture. I was listening to Jordan Peterson the other day. I forget who he was talking to, but he was trying to nicely say that if you are a psychopath, we mean that not from like, oh, that dude's crazy. No, like a legitimate psychopath or someone that's, sociopathic that doesn't really feel empathy. They don't feel empathetic pain, even if they're the ones causing the pain, those types of things, that those people are not able to be remedied. They're not able to be rehabilitated. That when you put those people in prison, they have to stay there. And so part of my struggle is like science, even the science of the brain, even though we have a limited understanding, I want to tend to believe those things, but then we also have to believe that the gospel can fix just about everything. But then whenever you see individuals like these people that are being interviewed in prison, these serial killers and all that, and you finally have this person like, did you ever have any feelings when you were doing this? And these people just smile, and the only feeling they had was pleasure when they were doing some of these most like heinous and awful things. But what brought that to mind is a lot of these Roman rulers had a lot of that. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just they were drunk on power; it was psychopathy and you know, they're sociopathy, and it was just kind of one of those things that's kind of hard to deal with.
Well, like Nero went off the deep end. Like if you read some of the stuff that like happened, like he killed his own mother. After that happened, he went off the deep end. Sources say he killed his own mother. Other sources will say differently. But then had a wife who was pregnant with his child, got angry at her, kicked her to death. She died. And then he had a boy castrated and married the boy because the boy looked like his wife that he just killed. Like, wow, how crazy! How can you go from like this kind of stoic, like ruler of Nero, and then just completely fall the way that you fall? You know what it is? Dude didn't have Christ, didn't have God. You know, like, do you think if there was a chance that Paul was able to preach or give his testimony to Nero? I don't know if he got the chance or not, but who knows what change that could have made.
Well, look at Agrippa's relatives we see at Christ's days, okay, all the way up to Agrippa, right? Not much had changed. When you really look at Paul, Christ, you look at Agrippa and his relatives, has really that much changed? I mean, I know it's not as it doesn't look like this in terms of how they put people to death, but is that much changed about giving the gospel and being attacked and the psychopaths that we see that are running the country? I mean, times have not really changed. I mean, maybe they're more civilized in the world we live in today, but you're seeing a repetitiveness.
It's definitely more civilized. I mean, you're going to lose your job rather than get thrown to lions, but you know.
Well, I think the thing that I was reading in the commentary was talking about, you know, you've got all these leaders, and like you said, I mean, some of them are crazy, but it's God's ordained timing. Yeah. Right? He is in control. Like, his sovereignty is still.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we got, you know, you have elections on certain things, and, you know, it's like, I remember as like a 6-year-old, I think it was like the Clinton-Bush election. I think it was back in 92. And I remember Clinton winning, and I thought like the world was going to end, you know, like as a 6-year-old. And I was just like, oh my gosh, man, that's when like politics actually become your idol.
You were 6 in 92.
I was 6 in 92. Yeah.
Yeah. I was, yeah.
5.
So was I.
Yeah.
I was 6.
Okay. Then I wasn't 6, and I was like 7 or 8.
Yeah. I was getting ready to get married.
Yeah. So, but I just remember that. And like,
I think I voted for Ross Perot in that election.
Ross Perot.
Not Voss Perot.
But the way I look at it is like, whatever happens, like who's ever president or whatever elected leader gets in there, it's God's judgment.
That is what I look at, because depending on your political persuasion, you're either super excited right now or you're super disappointed right now, or if you're looking forward to the next midterm or the next general, it's like, oh, if that's consuming your brain, not only does it take you out of your own community, you don't know the name of your mayor, but you're really worried about who's going to win the Senate. Not that it's not important, but the thing that's important for us as we discuss is whenever I do read through sections like this, because again, in Acts, you'll have one paragraph that'll cover like years. And I'm like, there were multiple rulers that made an unbelievable amount of decisions that people either agreed with or didn't agree with, that affected their everyday lives. And yet we're still here talking. Yep. And so like, I hate just in general, when everyone talks about how this election might be our last election, it's like, perhaps, or we're just living in a moment in time that is fairly wrought or fraught with a lot of anxiety. And we have both sides trying to increase the level of anxiety to push voter turnout and all those types of things. And look, I get it as a political strategy, but it's like, guys, how much do you need to see from history, not just from the Bible, but from any historical record, to where it's like, well, this was the moment that everything, went bad for the world. It's never that way. It might lead to the fall of Rome. It might lead to the fall of the Byzantine Empire. It might lead to the fall of America. But what we're talking about in terms of God's timing, we are talking about a literal blip on the radar.
Yeah. I mean, God is the ultimate curator of everything that's going on. And that's what we have to remember. I mean, like, look at if you read throughout the Bible, there's tough times throughout the Bible all the time. This isn't just some, lovey-dovey story where everything is just great. Like, bad things happen, but God shows you his plan from Genesis all to Revelation. You see God's heart and you see God's plan, no matter what circumstances people are in, whether they are good or bad.
All right. Well, guys, let's see it to the end of Acts 25. So, Howard, if you can wrap us up, you did the beginning. Let's go ahead and do the end. Let's do verses 23 through 27.
23 through 27. The next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp and entered the audience room with high-ranking military officers and prominent men of the city. At the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. Festus said, "King Agrippa, and all who are present with us, you see this man? The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him in Jerusalem and here in Caesarea, shouting that he ought not live any longer. I found he had done nothing deserving of death, but because he made his appeal to emperor, I decided to send him to Rome. But I have nothing definite to write to his majesty about him. Therefore I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that as a result of the investigation, I may have something to write, for I think it is unreasonable to send a prisoner to Rome without specifying the charges against him."
I thought it was interesting to even use the word unreasonable in this description of what was happening. But I mean, we do see here in verse 26, but I have nothing definite to write to my Lord about him. This was not true. Festus had the charges. The charges didn't have any evidence connected to it. And so this just pushes the narrative forward as we go into Acts 26.
I kind of disagree a little bit
part?
on that. That he didn't have all the answers. That's why he's appealing to Agrippa, because he doesn't know Jewish traditions or Jewish law as well. Like,
I'm not saying he was actively lying. I'm just saying when he says, I have nothing definite to write, my Lord, like, he had charges in his hand.
But he has charges based upon the chief priests saying
the conjecture of the priests.
Yeah, saying, hey, this guy's blaspheming our God because he's saying that this guy, the Christ, is the Messiah, which isn't true. And so he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And we go into the next chapter and we'll talk about it next week. Like, he tells Paul he's insane, And so that's where we have to look at, like, he didn't have the actual cultural background or theological background that Agrippa would have, because Agrippa grew up.
Yeah, I think that's like you said, that's the whole reason he even brought him in. Like, he could have written something up and sent it to the governor.
Yep.
But, King Agrippa is coming to give him, congratulate him on his new position. And while he's there, he's like, hey, I need a favor. I don't really understand what's going on here. I need your help to write something, because from what I was reading in the commentary, it's like, if a governor writes to Nero and it doesn't make sense what he's writing, like, that's almost
Nero
a death sentence for him. Yeah.
Right. It's like, why did you bring this to me? Like, I had other things that I could do. Anything else on Acts 25?
No.
Hey, Ryan, should they be able to stick around for the next few?
Yeah, I think they should.
Okay, guys, you got the horn stamp of approval.
I'll cut my socks.
Will you do it live on air? Will you make yourself like two separate socks?
I'll let you borrow my socks.
Yeah.
Donnie, I think we're going to make that happen. But guys, we're going to leave that there, but come back here next week where we are going to dig into Acts 26. Acts 26, so make sure you're read up through that. But before we let you go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Just wanted to remind you guys that we do have a forging table starter set through Crossway, and we do have cheaper access to the Logos Bible software, the best Bible software on planet Earth. And here's the thing, guys. I still get DMs and emails from guys that are like, I can't find the Bible software link. I can't find all that. Every time I do an ad, I say it's in the show notes. Ryan, where's it at?
It's in the show notes.
It's in the show notes, guys. So if you go to the show notes, so if you're listening to this on Apple, click on the episode, go into the notes, and it's like magic. You'll see links to the episode. It'll take you to the website. So guys, if you want to start your own forging table, there's this 5-book set through Crossway that you guys should definitely check out. And then obviously the Logos Bible software we've talked about a lot. It is an incredibly, incredibly powerful tool that'll help you dig in as far as you would like to dig in to the Bible. So you can check that out, but you can check that out at a discount. And also, guys, we are a donation-based ministry. So if you're wondering, how did we afford lights and cameras and all this stuff, even this timer, this very, very expensive timer that sits in the middle of the table, it's because we have guys just like you that are in on our mission to equip men around the globe to push back darkness. Go to our donation page. That is just Undaunted.Life /donate. That is also where, Ryan? In the show notes.
In the show notes.
Just say in the show
In the
notes.
show
Okay,
notes.
it's in the show notes. So guys, if you can't find our donation page, if it's hard to type in Undaunted.Life/donate, we did you a solid. It is in the show notes, guys. Hop on board and be a donor.
Don't forget, it's in the show notes.
It's in the show notes. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.